Hey, good morning, everyone. This is our April Nonprofit Success Lab, and we're glad that you are here to join us. I'm going to have Christy go ahead and introduce herself first, and then we'll just get right through this. There's a lot that we want to cover, and this is going to be interactive. So if you have questions, just stop us or put it in the chat. We've got two experts with us today. As well as probably others in this mix. But Christy, I'm going to stop and let you introduce yourself.
Okay, great. Good morning. My name is Christine Stoll. I'm with Clearwater Financial. We are a municipal advisory firm and we work with public entities as consultants. We have a specialty in public finance and helping them with financial planning and entering the markets. I also have the CEO with Clearwater with me, Cameron Ariel, so I'll have him introduce himself.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to be with you. Excited for the conversation and discussing some ways that we may be able to help.
Awesome. All right. Well, then I'm going to jump right in. I'm Blossom Johnston. I'm the CEO and founder of Idaho Partners for Good. And I'll just level set right out of the gate. The mission for Idaho Partners for Good is we are reinventing how people like all of us give of our time, talent, and treasure, how we share our expertise and do greater good together. And the reason we do that is we want to develop stronger, healthier, better equipped nonprofits so that they can do more of what they do best. And so this is just some of the things, and you're in our monthly nonprofit success lab. It's one of the things that we have been doing for about 3 years now. We do leadership cohorts. We're waiting on funding for one specific to the housing ecosystem in Idaho. We have a ton of consulting services, and we also work on both sides of the philanthropic coin. That just means that those that give the philanthropy side of things, we help them give for bigger impact so that the nonprofits can get better. So this is what we're doing this month. We're strengthening the safety net, and it falls under a much larger pillar or movement called Our Idaho Neighbor to Neighbor. And this is the fourth in the series. And my friend Christy and I are going to just hopefully help you today to find some solutions on how to strengthen your part of the safety net. With that larger movement that this is falling under is called Our Idaho Neighbor to Neighbor, and it's a playbook, and that playbook is guided by these three principles that we've had over 100 people from across the state, multi-generational, different backgrounds, come up with these three things that we believe every Idahoan can get behind and support. And that is that we all have some kind of capacity and we all care about our neighbors. Those with greater capacity carry more. Then our second value or guiding principle is this is rooted in Idaho. And instead of the word defined, we updated it. A young person actually said, can we change that word to growth or growing? And so it's rooted in Idaho and growing together. And that one speaks to this tension that we're all holding between those of us who have been in Idaho for a long time and those that want to get grafted in. So that's what our second principle is. The third principle is really around we've got to keep our eye on the ball of prevention. Prevention protects people and resources. So let's keep investing upstream. So those are the three guiding principles for our Idaho Neighbor to Neighbor. These are the four pillars. So January, February, March, we did pillar one on make it visible, pillar two on mobilizing Idahoans, and pillar three on working together. This month, we are focused on pillar four, strengthening the safety net through shared services, strategic alignment, and looking at how we create pathways of sustainability. Okay, I'm going to slow it down now. And this is what we're hoping that you come away with today is clarity on why your organization must exist or not. A practical way to assess some strategic partnerships. Um, we're going to expose you to the spectrum of collaboration models, knowing that we're not giving you the exhaustive list. And then we're hoping to make some mindset shifts from scarcity to strategic alignment. So that hold on to your hat. That's what we're working towards by the end of this workshop. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Christy because when we were preparing, she was telling me about this story. And so I'm looking at that think thing going around and around, and it's kind of annoying. So I'm gonna I'm gonna toggle off our presentation and just let you talk. Is that okay, Christy?
Absolutely.
Okay.
As I have been in my career for a while, I have come across lots of people that work in lots of different industries, including nonprofits. And I have a friend that, um, just this past fiscal year start for them was July 1. And right before that, right as that was happening, she posted on LinkedIn that, so she was an executive director for a local nonprofit that has many different programs underneath their umbrella. She's been an executive director of nonprofits for most of her career, so a long time. And so, given what has been happening nationally with this administration, cutting of funding and so forth, what came to fruition was that she and her board really needed to look keep what do they need to do to keep the organization going. It's been around for a long time, and as I said, lots of different um, business strategies or uh, entities that they help fund. And they had to make the hard decision that she worked really hard the 6 months prior to that to really work herself out of a job, if you will, in the anticipation of shoring up some of the funding gaps that they were seeing. They had seen a lot of uh, just the ceasing of monies that they were used to having. And so in July, she stated on LinkedIn that she was looking for new opportunities, and not because she didn't love her organization, but honestly, it was to help the organization stay alive or afloat. So it's, sacrificing her own position so that they can move forward because paying an executive director at that point wasn't something that they were able to continue to do without some additional strategy cuts and so forth. So, in addition to just looking strategically at everything that they were doing and how could they be more efficient, what needed to cease, if you will, including what costs for administration and overhead would they be able to live, I guess, would allow them to buy some time and live, which is a really hard decision. Broke her heart. It's near and dear to her heart. However, the mission was bigger than her. And so the decision was a joint decision to not have a director. Now we hope in the future they'll be able to, but she looked for other opportunities where she could give her time, treasure, and talent. But as you can imagine, this ties into this conversation that we're having now. This is something that nonprofits or any other industry, I suppose, needs to consider when times get tough, and looking beyond.
Awesome. So we're talking about the safety net today, and I'm going to ask you to come off mute and help define what a community safety net is. What do you think that when we talk about the community safety net, what do we mean? And Jillian, I know I can count on you that you have some thoughts around that. So do you want to start?
For me, that community safety net requires all hands on the same goal, right? So if there's an initiative, those overlapping themes or overlapping needs seem to impact multiple organizations. So when I think about the safety net, you think about the interwoven nature of working together, and that drives from communication. So connecting partners, connecting resources, really just avoiding recreating the wheel and utilizing the gears that are out there already. Is that a good summary?
Awesome. Hey, Gary, I know you've been in the trenches for a long time. Can you come off mute and give us your definition of the community safety net?
Uh,
Nope, can't hear you, Gary. Oh, there you are.
There we go. I was afraid you'd ask me something like that. The you know, in fact, I sent it to you. I I went to a web thing at Osher this weekend or this week about community's response to COVID, and it was from a campus in Milwaukee, and and it seemed to me that there was a lot of similarities in how they dealt with what they call trauma-informed solutions. It seems like a lot of this is similar to that, what we're talking about in neighbors to neighbors. Um, I I think what it is that there's this kind of embedded resource there that is underutilized, and kind of like Jillian was saying, is in fact it's finding these underutilized or unutilized resources in a community and putting them to work, and they're just kind of waiting there. So there's this potential that exists, and it's I think either minimally or under tapped or untapped.
Okay,
I don't know if
Caitlin,
that
I know
helps.
I saw something pop into chat. So do you have a definition of the community safety net?
I had a demonstration of it. That's okay. Last year, the Dream Factory got a request for a kid that would only qualify for our services for like 3 more weeks. And we stumbled into a safety net because we found organizations and businesses and nonprofits and public figures that came together to help grant that dream for him. And then that safety net sort of continued for that family because there continued to be storytelling and fundraising for all of his hospital bills. And it's been almost 6 months and it's still happening for this family. And it all started because we got the request and we kept connecting people in their strengths to that family's needs.
That's awesome, Katie. That is exactly. It is a local set of resources, cross-sector, private, public, municipalities, all of it is part of that safety net under a community of especially vulnerable people, vulnerable individuals, vulnerable families, and they provide essential services like food, housing, medical, behavioral, all of those good things. So that is what we're talking about when we're talking about the safety net that we need to strengthen. Okay. All righty. So I'm going to go back into our uh, this little funky thing we're going to get off right now. All right. Okay. So here's I want you. There was a term that I learned a couple of years ago from my friend Shannon McGuire. We were in a public forum and she mentioned the term itchy bottom. And I thought that was a very interesting term. And what it meant was the things that make us uncomfortable um, to lean into instead of lean back from. Okay. So I do want you to lean in because we're in this together. All right. So, what are your top three challenges, opportunities, or pain points when you think about the safety net where you're playing in this community safety net? And your safety net may not be in a particular like neighborhood or city. It could actually be more statewide or nationwide. But what are some of, put in chat, what are some of your top challenges, opportunities, and pain points? And then Bill, will you be watching the chat for me and just, chime in?
Yes.
Okay. Does anybody want to come off mute and talk about some of their top challenges, opportunities, or pain points?
Hi there, Blossom. It's Laura.
Hey, Laura.
Um, we're a tiny bit different since we're a 501c 6 and not what I call a true nonprofit. But I think it's the same challenge. Probably, I'm assuming it's the same challenge. Is everyone is busy? Period. There's not enough time. I mean, I'm doing three things at once now, which is not appropriate or fair to what the time I'm giving this or the other two things. So I think everyone's doing good things. So I mean my top or this and this is probably more personal than no, it's not. I think it's on the whole. The world is so busy, it's moving so fast, and it's hard to know and pick and choose what to spend your time on.
That is probably a theme that I've heard, and it's something I struggle with. What do I put my eyeballs to instead of just scrolling right past? So yeah. Other what else are people struggling with? Or what opportunity is in front of you? Okay, we've got Katie is saying volunteer flow and commitment. Okay, technology. Let's see.
Innovation.
Oh, Maggie, is that the opportunity that you're that's in front of you?
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Oh, thought I was on mute this whole time.
Hmm.
Yeah, so we are working on, we started an innovation task force and um, it's been pretty exciting. The funding's going to be challenging, but we have an endowment, so they are kind of buying into it, but we have to sell it. So now the task at hand is innovating from inside and outside. So we're looking at portals for some pivots for how we distribute education to the families that really need it for the learning challenges. So it's kind of an
Awesome.
exciting time, but it's also kind of a stressful time in that respect. So there's both a challenge and an opportunity I see here. And then the funding part is like, okay, I'm working on budget. So kind of like looking at a demo and trying to do all the things I'm doing at the same time with my resources. We're slimming up because we have to be financially sustainable. So all those things come into play. So, but yeah, it's exciting.
Okay, awesome. I love that. Okay, how ready are you as an organization to explore alternatives to your current operating or business model? Again, use the chat or come off mute. Okay, so I'll answer that one. I am always looking for alternatives. That is just part and parcel of what good leaders do, is you're constantly looking for how do you get better. And so looking at alternatives to our current operating model, we've iterated pretty much every year since we started. So I do think I think the board kind of gets tired of that at times, so there is some of that. So you have to be careful. All right, so how ready is your board to explore alternatives? Anybody? Bill, can I get you to lean into that one?
Yeah, I just had my cursor over the mic. Um, our board I'm happy to say is ready. Probably a little bit behind Blossom, but our board is I sit on the board with IP4G and we've been pivoting pretty much consistently over the last several months. I can't say that everybody is equally ready or equally receptive of the idea, but that has improved throughout the process. And we've been very open to reallocating resources, looking into resources from other organizations, bringing on shadow board members so that we can train for the next group of board members and some of those things. So that's bringing a lot of perspectives and facets to our ability to create solutions to serve others.
Awesome. Okay. I want you to really think about this last question. What do you do? What does your organization do that no one else in your service area can do as effectively? Okay, brag on yourself a little bit here, but what can you do that no one else can do as effectively? All right, I'm going to brag on us. We can tailor make solutions that are much cheaper than some of these big consulting firms. We have come up with solutions that aren't in the norm. So I don't think that anybody else in the service area is doing that as effectively as we do. Others? Cameron, I want you to answer that question for Clearwater.
Man, gosh, what I love this question because I think it makes you really think hard about that. And obviously, we try to be pretty humble about our approach, but I would say, and I'm very curious, Christy's thoughts on this as well, but I would say our niche, working with municipalities, nonprofits in particular, um, in and of itself is unique to Idaho. So the fact that we are the only municipal advisor firm headquartered in Idaho is an obvious unique element. The thing that I think really sets us apart, even nationally, is we are not traditionally, a municipal advisor is either a bank or a large investment house. We are not. We are a standalone, bootstrapped from the ground up firm. And as such, we are not transactional in nature. Our focus, our mission is to help individuals and organizations, governments, nonprofits, achieve their potential. So that in and of itself is a unique approach to what we do. I think the thing that manifests itself from that mission is we're not just here to lend. We're actually here to make sure you get, our clients and the folks that we work with are successful. Bottom line, if we can help lift in some way, if we can help you, get your finances in order, if we can help you understand, that your revenues do not match your expenses, have hard conversations around what that means. If we can help you get credit worthy, what does that mean? What is the process to obtain lending to grow and expand? What does it mean to consolidate? Those are the things that I think really set us apart as we're mission driven, not transactional.
Awesome. Well, as you can see, that's the reason why we are partnering with Clearwater Financial. And so at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Christy to start talking about some of those options that are available to nonprofits that you may or may not know about. And so again, use the chat or come off mute and ask your questions. All right, Christy? You're on mute.
There we go. Sorry about that. Just wanted to start and kind of lay the ground. Is that I'll keep my comments. Cameron and I will keep our comments grounded in what we know, which is the financial side of sustainability. So in my role as municipal advisor at Clearwater, I do work with public entities and organizations. And as Cameron mentioned, we have a special niche about how to fund critical needs, especially when traditional funding starts to get really tight, which I think, you know, is always kind of an ongoing, but maybe more so now. What we're seeing across sectors is that funding challenges are rarely just about money. A lot of times it's coupled with structure, scale, and your strategy. And, you know, those things, I think a lot of times we might rush to, oh, geez, we don't have the funding. But really, sometimes you need to step back and examine your structure and your scale before going down the funding route, because they're all very much tied together. So, you know, as we think about our role in the safety net, some financial realities for us to be aware of are, you know, in the funding space, not all services are viewed the same. Organizations providing core safety net services such as like housing, health, food access, they may tend to have a stronger pathway, if you will, to structured funding. Um, and that's not really a value judgment. It's about the funders are looking for risk and repayment realities. And when I'm talking about funding, I guess I am talking about not necessarily grants and so forth. I'm talking about funding that you would potentially need to pay back. So, you know, something to keep in mind is your organization positioned in a way that allows with how funding actually flows or would be granted? You know, as I mentioned, we're seeing a shift, and you know, funders are really looking forward to or looking towards funding fewer things and looking for more stable organizations. So maybe in the past, when there was more funding available, they might take a risk on, you know, something that was a little bit more new, smaller, that sort of thing. And I think the mindset is, you know, what is going to be the least risk for the funder? And so your financial standpoint or fragmentation thereof really would be a factor. So if you have, when you look, and these are hard, you know, conversations, but important ones, do you have duplicated overhead? Smaller balance sheets? Those kinds of things give you fewer options. And that is where your partnerships and shared services start to move you into, you know, from a nice to have to a necessity. So, you know, be thinking about that. I was able to write a blog post for Idaho Partners for Good in the last couple of weeks, and I think it was just published last week. So we outlined some non-traditional financing tools. We did, you know, mention partnerships with municipalities, shared facilities, and alternative capital structures. But you know, a lot of something to think about is most of those tools can work, but only on a certain scale and a level of stability. So a standalone organization may struggle to access some of these funding options where collaborative structure might unlock them. And, you know, we've got some examples of, you know, entities that have come together to be stronger so that they can reduce the duplication, which is, you know, reduces overhead and so forth. And they do look like a better credit risk for a funder. You know, and so from a financial lens, partnerships can improve your credit worthiness, create operational efficiencies, and support more predictable revenue, which is what those funders are looking for. And that's going to expand the options that you have financially. So again, I guess we would say, look at, you know, at what point of the spectrum does our organization, when you're asking yourself, have financial options, excuse me, what can we do to help them improve materially? You know, do we need to have some partnerships? Do we have the ability to reduce overhead and so forth? I do think one of the hardest realities is that not every organization, whether you're nonprofit or not, is financially structured to sustain itself long term. And in a funding reality world of where we are right now, you know, sometimes the strongest way to protect your mission isn't independence. Potentially, it could be partnership or integration. that's not a failure per se. That's a stewardship of your impact, which I think directly ties to that original um, example that I gave. It can be heart wrenching for sure, but sometimes again, it's a bigger than one person. Um, so some questions I might leave you with is for you to think about is your organization needed? Uh, if your organization needed to access capital markets, could you? What would a funder see if they looked at your structure? So how appealing would you be? What would your credit risk be? And would partnering with another organization change that answer? Um, so I think Cameron and I, and he can definitely jump in. I think we would say you don't need to become financial experts per se, but you do need to understand how your structure impacts the sustainability of being able to access markets or funders. Because I often think that the path to more funding isn't a new grant always. It's rethinking how you operate and who you operate with or partner with, which is exactly this conversation today.
Yeah. So Christy, in your article, you talked about the full capital stack.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I know that there are a lot of nonprofit leaders that is a business term that they may or may not be acquainted with. So as you talk about that, what do you mean?
Mm-hmm. And Cameron, feel free to jump in. But the capital stack is all of your options, right? Often it's a pyramid. And we always want to start with what is your free resources, right? That is when any nonprofit or for profit or municipality is looking to fund some kind of capital structure or expense, we're always looking at what can we get for little or no payback, meaning a free grant. What can we do partnership wise to leverage our ability to do our job and that sort of thing. And then as we move up the pyramid, we are looking for after you've exhausted all of those other uh, fundings, grants, one-time funds, partnership ability to leverage, etc. Oftentimes you do come to, okay, well, we still have a gap. So what is that gap? And so the gap oftentimes is uh, financing. So when we're talking about your capital stack, it's really all of those options with financing or something that you have to pay back at the very top. I think everybody wants to mitigate that as much as possible. So when we're talking about that, that could be a bank loan, a line of credit, your short term things that you need short term for liquidity to bridge you to the next step. We specifically talked about in that also taxable loans or bonds. When a project doesn't qualify, sometimes they'll qualify for tax exempt treatment, sometimes not. We're looking at below market loans. So oftentimes, a nonprofit might be able to use a conduit issuer or an entity that can help them get to the market with a lower interest rate than they would be able to get on their own. And sometimes that can be paid back, or that could have a favorable tax treatment where where it is tax exempt. So we talked about accessing those tools, going through a conduit that helps you, which is an entity that has the ability to, either help you with your credit rating or help you access the market through them, so that you can get a lower term than you would be able to get by yourself in the market. Cameron, anything to add quick on that?
Yeah, that's really good stuff. I would maybe just add kind of a practical element. I think what Christy's describing for you all in the capital stack is really just what it takes to actually run your organization. So it could be, really taking a hard look at your revenue stream. What is it that brings in money? And Blossom mentioned the the challenges. One of the major challenges that we see in this space is confusing one-time money with ongoing revenue. So you may get this great grant, and it's awesome when we're gonna, change the world. When in reality, oftentimes that can be a dangerous play. If you put that towards, for example, an employee, one-time money going to a ongoing obligation, or entering into a long-term lease, when the grant will only fund you maybe for 2 years of that. So from a practical perspective, not all revenue is treated equally, but it's important, to Christy's point, to really look at all available revenues. And that becomes an important analysis, because really it's a gut check. I love Christy's example that she provided. Sometimes we just don't want to understand that, whether because we're blinded by our passion. Sometimes our passion can be our greatest strength. It can also potentially be our worst blind spot if we're not really looking at these things from a realistic perspective. So it's really just breaking down what is it that's making my organization stable. And then from there, if there's a gap, what do I do? I think Christy really outlined well in the article. And in this conversation with you all, the safety net is so important. It's not a weakness to lean on somebody else. So, for example, I love the practical application of IT services. We could hire and bring on an ongoing obligation, right? We treat we want to hire people and be obligated to them in our organization and as a company. So that's a big decision when we bring somebody on. But maybe it makes more sense that if we outsource that, we have a partner that does that really well. They can do it at a lower cost than we could on our balance sheet. Let's partner with somebody else for that. The hard discussion about an executive director. We work with organizations. Christy gave the example. There were 4 organizations operating in the exact same space. They provide the exact same service at various levels to varying populations. Hard conversation, but why do you have 4 executives when that could be consolidated into one and provide the same service at a much reduced cost? So those are just some practical elements that you're treating that capital stack, you're treating those revenues sacrosanct. I mean, they're sacred to your organization, because if you don't, you're going to find yourself in a position where the pyramid is like this. It's actually flipped on its head. Your expenses are exceeding your revenues. Your ongoing costs aren't matching the type of revenue that's coming in, and that can lead to short-term and long-term instability. So we really encourage you all and our clients to have those hard conversations. Walk through that, make sure you really, really understand well what it is that is the gas in your tank. What is the funds that are driving your organization forward? And then are there ways to sharpen that? Making sure we're reaching out as a community, we're helping each other, we're leaning into each other's strengths, and we're making sure that we're not leaving anybody behind in that sense. So
I really liked your language, Christy, about structure plus scale plus strategy. And so when you're talking, I understand structure, I understand strategy. What do you mean by scale?
Good question. So scale is exactly what we're talking about, is how do you how do you amplify, right? How do you scale up so that you can serve more? And sometimes that scaling is partnering, right? It is, again, looking at the people that are in your space and saying, do I have to do this alone? Or are we better equipped to do this part of it? And this other partner is really strong over here. And together we can scale the message, we can scale the service to a broader entity. So that looks different for every organization. But when we're looking at, if even if you're looking internally of how do you scale the way you do things, can you have some efficiencies? Can you automate things? That sort of thing. Can you have a template that you duplicate over time instead of creating the same thing over and over? So scale can mean a lot of things, but I think in this context it means how do you're in business, you're serving a cause. How do you continue to serve that cause and amplify that? Does it have to be just you? Can it be with partners? And again, I wanted to kind of go back to the financial thing just because I think sometimes when we're talking about accessing the markets or loans, it might be a little bit foreign to nonprofits. This might be a little bit more in your wheelhouse, or something that's more realistic for you in what you might deal with is that you might have a loan that is at a higher interest rate. And when you're looking at scaling back or just retooling and seeing where you are, if you really look at, well, if I could refinance this to a lower amount so that my debt obligation is lower every month, that in and of itself might really help you with your capital stack. It might help you buy some time, leverage, that sort of thing. So when Karen and I are talking about really looking at all of those things and accessing the market, there are things that nonprofits can access that you're probably not aware of, where again you can refinance debt at a lower rate potentially. And in that article, we used an example of a nonprofit in the Twin Falls area, which is actually an arm of a charter school. And they had a loan that they had a balloon payment coming. So you might have something like that on your books. And we were able to help them shop the market competitively so that they could find the best rate for themselves. And the reason why you might say, well, why were you involved as a municipal advisor versus why can't I just go to the bank? You certainly can. We, as a municipal advisor, we're able to help structure complicated deals. And if it is a municipal loan, if you will, there is tax exempt things that the banks can get. So it would lower they get a credit, if you will, if they're working in that capacity. And so, not to overburden it, but it is a little bit more complicated. And so a municipal advisor can help you down that road and help that bank understand the options that they would get so that they can offer a lower rate.
So I will say that getting capital ready really does require you to look at your capacity. So you need to take a look at your internal ops, your leadership, your governance. It is the capital ready means you have the capacity and you have the community support. Okay, so you've got to have those in order to be ready for capital. Get your ducks in a line with the kinds of help that the Clearwater team, Idaho Partners for Good can do. I want Mindy and or Maggie to come off mute and talk about what they put in the chat because that was interesting, but I didn't quite understand it.
I'll just say for the Idaho Veterans Chamber of Commerce, we have IT services that we do with a trade, and not a complete trade. It's a very discounted trade, I would say, on their end. And then on our end, we can offer sponsorships for different events. That stuff doesn't really cost us anything to put their information and their logos on our flyers. Like we have an event on the 22nd at Talea Wine, and our IT is actually going to be listed as a sponsor and give him an opportunity to speak to the group. And it's going to be a big event. So it's finding those ways to give back to them for what they're giving to us as an organization to help us with the needs that we have. And it's been a really great working relationship. And each year, I mean, we just have to have a conversation about, is this still working? Do you want to change your sponsorships? What would you like now that you've seen last year? And so it's just having that very quick conversation, and it works out pretty well. We also have, I would say, we have some internships too as well. And we use, because we're a veteran service organization, there's an internship program with the military. There's internship program with the STEM Action Center. There's internships with the Boise State University WorkU program. And all of them have different variations of cost for what you receive, but they're absolutely very affordable. And when people talk about us scaling and growing to where we're at today, it has to do a lot of that, bringing those talented people in, doing some short project management things, and helping us to get where we need to go, and giving them experience too as well, working in communities. And so there's a lot of opportunities out there for outsourcing that can be very low cost or no cost at all to help with different things that you have going on. And if anybody on the call is a nonprofit organization or a business and they want to get connected to our Skill Bridge program, we're happy to connect you. It's military transitioning out of the service. They haven't yet, but they're able to do internships. And so it's a great program.
Awesome. Thank you, Mindy. So in the interest of time, because we're getting towards the end of this workshop, thank you, first of all, for everyone that's here. But I want to make sure that you understand there is a spectrum of strategic partnerships, and it starts from very low risk things like you're sharing information and referrals, or maybe it steps up to a coordination kind of a scenario where you're aligning services and programs. Maybe you get higher into collaboration where you're maybe moving one of your programs to somebody else and you're taking one of theirs because you do it better. So this is not exhaustive, but it's a place for you to start thinking about where might a strategic partnership exist that we could in the next 30 to 60 days explore more deeply. We do have a rubric that we created for our own selves because we're constantly looking for strategic partnerships, that we happy to share that with all of you as well. So I'm going to let's see. Okay, here here's the hard moment of truth. There's essentially three paths in our current environment. Strengthen internally, which we all have to do, partner strategically, or transition, which essentially means stop or integrate. Those are kind of the three areas that are pathways that are super viable in our current environment. So maybe you're the stronger partner and somebody's gonna integrate with you. Yes, awesome, please. Or maybe you're the one that's looking for. Either way, we want you to know that we are here and we know this is scary stuff. We know that there's a scarcity mindset out there right now, but we're asking you to look instead of at what's scarce, to look at what strategy you might start employing. So the question that scarcity asks is, how do we survive? The question strategy asks is, how do we serve our community together better than we ever could alone? Okay, that's make the shift in your mindsets if you haven't yet to this place of, okay, I'm not trying to survive anymore. I'm going to step into the strategy side of things and I'm going to go find how I serve the community better together. All right, I'm going to stop for a second and see if there's any specific questions about what you heard, or you have two really great experts here. If you have some questions specific to this topic, please ask them. Gary?
Christine, I'm really curious. I moved from the Bay Area and there are tons of nonprofits down there, and I moved to Boise kind of in a roundabout way. And I was surprised at how many nonprofits there are and all the plethora of work that they do. You mentioned consolidation or integration here. And what level are you seeing much of that happening yet?
We are beginning. In fact, I just had a coffee yesterday with one of the larger nonprofits in the area, and they are wanting to find smaller nonprofits that can merge with them because
Oh,
they know that they have the staffing, they have the buildings, they have all the things, and they're seeing mission alignment with a bunch of these smaller ones. And so they would love to have some matchmaking services so that they can be assured that it is a good fit.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, and I would say, this is even this is a manifestation of the question, Gary. We're seeing it in the government space, believe it or not. So when you're seeing governments consolidate, I think that's a telltale sign that it's hyper active in other
Yeah.
spaces, private, nonprofit. I mean, but quite frankly, I think it's from a financial perspective, from a service delivery perspective. I love Blossom's comment that it's an opportunity mindset. I mean, how cool is it to see our governments being more efficient? I'll give you an example. There's 5 counties in eastern Idaho that they all do solid waste, so landfills, and on their own, quite frankly, they're not ran well. They're expensive, and they're hurting in the environment. Regulatorily, they're starting to have issues. Well, what a cool concept to centralize that into one state of the art landfill that services a much larger population at a much higher grade of service. And that's just an example of what we're seeing there. But yes, Gary, to your point, I think it's a cool and again, it's a very sensitive topic, and I want to make sure we're not you know Pollyanna about some of these kinds of decisions, but I really do think it's a cool opportunity if folks are open to it, to really having a heart to heart about their situation, and then getting after it a little bit to say, how do we evolve? How do we make this better? Because I think it is an opportunity to serve our community at a higher level. I really do.
Right.
I might just add to that, and I know Blossom's group does great work in this. Again, to Cameron's point of not being Pollyanna about this, you would, in his example of the 5 counties, there was, but this is directly related to any, is that when those folks came together, they had to think about bylaws, joint bylaws. They had to think about joint budgets and how they would merge into one. And is there more ownership? Is there less ownership? Is there equal ownership? If they had more, as you can imagine, 5 entities has a leader in each one of them. So who's going to be the leader for the one? And then what are the other entity leaders? What does that look like in the new structure? So it's all really hard, but very important conversations that can lead to an ultimately stronger organization. And it's hard when it's your baby and you feel so much ownership to really be able to take a step back and think about being a good steward and what that actually means, bigger than yourself.
Yeah. Okay, so the key question is, we purposely did not schedule or put next month's nonprofit success lab out yet because we knew this would be one of those topics where people are going, okay, so what? And so what do you need you've heard some of this, and I think it's piquing a lot of interest. So then what do you need to get activated in order to do this thing well, effectively? You're being a good steward of your mission as well as your resources.
I
Blossom,
have a
I'll
thought.
chime in. Oh, go ahead, Katie. Sorry.
Oh, well, I think when it comes to this stewardship, of collaborating, partnering, transitioning, whatever it is, I think we need to know who to talk to and have those conversations. Because I can think of like a dozen organizations that we overlap with, but how do we have that conversation in an effective way?
Okay.
Yeah, and that's actually a really I really appreciate that point, Kitty, because I do think that's really the crux. One tool that I think really helps our clients is to get their financial information and really
Mhm.
spread that for them. So it's just getting real. We call it a well, I mean, you could in business terms, it's kind of either a cash flow or a profit and loss kind of a look at things, but it's what is your current state, and just having a real on the table conversation about that. And I think that really helps people get grounded in facts, because then it's not a boogeyman. You can really understand the financial health of your organization. Arguably, is a direct reflection of the stability of your organization. And so from there, it's then a conversation of, okay, what do we do? Um, do we need to consolidate something? Do we need to look at a partnership? Do we need to look at offloading a service? That's where I think real conversations can start. But it's just kind of getting real with the numbers.
Okay. I know Bill and
Yeah.
Mindy. Oh, go ahead. Bill and Mindy have their hands up. So Bill, you first, and then Mindy.
Thanks, Blossom. Yeah, I want to chime in with what Cameron was saying there. I spent a long time in the corporate world, and you would see in the news a lot, a company buying another company. This was around consolidating the base services, the base administrative functions, the base operating functions. That's where the commonality is. Where the difference is between a variety of nonprofits would be your heart. What's driving your heart to provide this particular service? But the hands are what lays the platform for serving your heart. And pretty much, hopefully, all nonprofits are sharing issues around finance and accounting, around IT, around human resources, around sales and marketing, and a variety of things. Those are going to be consistent across the board, and that's where shared services, serving some institutions that are aligned at the heart, maybe for a different outcome, but an overlapping outcome. That's where this takes place. And this is so refreshing to have this conversation. This is something that I know that Blossom has done it for a long time. I've been championing this for a long time. It's just been a very difficult conversation, and it's so good to see the conversation starting to become, I won't say easier. It's a hard conversation, but to see it get simpler.
Yeah. Mindy?
So two things. One, I've had this conversation at the national, federal level and with local senator offices about how much funding comes out and goes to a national level and never makes it down to the community level. And that's really disappointing to see how much we have these national organizations. And I mean, I'll be honest, there's some in the state of Idaho that could be amazing donor partners, and they're bringing in national organizations, and there's overheads and there's expenses and there's things that don't even go back to our communities. It doesn't even pay into our communities, right? So they're doing all these efforts around these national organizations, and really, where is all that funding going to? Is it really coming here? We got reached out to by Syracuse University to be a part of some research stuff, but why can't we apply for grants here in the state of Idaho where that money would come back here? Why do we have to go to the Syracuse University Institute for Veterans and Families, which I love them. They're great. I'm from New York, and I live 45 minutes from Syracuse. But it's just that, like, when will the federal funding and when will those resources come to us and at the local level? And when will our donors and those that have the ability to be able to support our organizations not have to bring in national organizations when we are doing a much better job at the local level than what they are. And connection is just, I mean, you just can't beat connection, and you can't get connection on a telephone or on a 1-800 number or on a national level. And so for us, that's what's really hard to see for us. And I don't really know how to, other than having the conversations with some of these folks that are actually supporting national organizations and not supporting us locally, and just talking about the impact and the overheads and how much money does not come back to Idaho. And that should be an eye opener for them to see that. And I'm happy to have a conversation offline about that, with you, Blossom, and anybody else,
Yeah,
because I know
yeah.
there's others that are impacted by those very same things. And it's really hard to see. The other is just for strategy for future. Yes, combining and doing the partnerships. And also, I would love to hear about how do we just keep the integrity of their brand and allow for them to still have the autonomy to be able to do what they were doing before under the same name, but doing it underneath another organization. We have two. We've actually partnered with one, but what we're finding is it's just really hard to really create those lines. We don't want to call them a committee, right? What are they for us? Are they an arm? Are they a committee? They don't want to lose that, that and it's not even about their decision making or anything along those lines. It's about a brand that they've had for years and who they
Mhm.
are, and just trying to help bring those thoughts together and talk about how do you do that? I mean, it's great, but how do you really do that without taking away from their branding and who they are as an organization, and allowing for them to still be who they were before?
So Mindy, I have some research on co-ops which have worked for a century in Idaho in the ag space that need to be considered in a broader sense now. That it could be a really good option for a lot of nonprofits is to come into more of a cooperative alignment where they retain their individuality, but then there is a governance structure. So we can do something like that next month, is to talk specifically about something like a cooperative, and how that could work for a bunch of different nonprofits coming together. So that's an option. I'm going to leave with this. On May 17th from 11 to 2, there is a CRA, a Community Reinvestment Act Resource Fair. It's being hosted by the FDIC and the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco. We are helping with that. And so if you would like information, just ping me. Happy to share the invite. They only can manage 50 in the room, but then unlimited online. They are going to do hybrid. So, and we'll also send our assessment that we use. Remember, it is tailored to us, so you have to tailor it to you. And then Christie's blog link as well, so you can have that because it's got some great information in it to dive a little bit deeper. So with that, Bill, do you remember that quote I really like that you have told us at the end of a couple of different meetings?
I think you're referring to if not us, who, and if not now, when. Feels like when right now.
And that's a mic drop moment. So thanks, everybody. And I'm going to stay on for a few more minutes if you have any specific questions.
Thank you.
For sure, Katie.
Thank you, everyone. See ya.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Blossom.
Cameron.
Happy Thursday.
All righty.